Ready to move to the next level in your product career? I'm Shobit from Intentional Product Manager. Join me as we discuss ways to help you stand out in your job search and your career so you can have more impact and make more money. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Intentional Product Manager podcast. I'm Shobit. I help product managers position themselves as leaders and have a great career. Now, today we are digging into a lot of exciting topics around ownership, platform product management, the world of payments, risk with product leader Kishore Narra. So he's led marketplace, ML risk, platform teams at companies you would have heard of. TaskRabbit, Coinbase, Meta. So I'm very excited to have him here. Kishore, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Shobit. I'm so excited to be a part of this conversation. Thank you for inviting. Looking forward to chat.
Amazing. We were just chatting before we began. Kishore also, you're familiar with the area I live in, but now he's a West Coaster, right? So you're in the Bay Area?
San Francisco City now.
Oh, you're in San Francisco. Okay. And if I got your quick career snapshot right, TaskRabbit, product executive now, you were at Coinbase earlier, and then before that Meta, and then before that Vistaprint and Bold. Like, is that roughly right?
Yeah, started at Vistaprint and then moved to this kind of like a startup which is called Bold. It's a privately held company. Not many people are aware. They're into resume business. Then I moved into Meta, Coinbase, and now at TaskRabbit.
Okay, let's warm up with a few simple questions. So, what was your first real product that you owned end to end?
That's a great question. So, initially, I started my career as a software engineer. So, when you are a software engineer, you might not be owning the product end to end, but I was lucky enough when I was at Vistaprint. There was this product called Vistaprint Plus that the company wanted to launch. It's a loyalty program, similar to Amazon's loyalty program that we have. And I was part of it. So I was a lead engineer there then, building the loyalty program behind the scenes. It was exciting because one, I was able to work very closely with the stakeholders, marketing and all, to see how they look at user problems, figure out like how we can help the users get the work done. While also obviously helping the business grow. I think there are two important coins, the sides of a coin, I guess. Sometimes people just hone in on one, but you need to make sure the business is also growing while also solving user problems. So that was very good introduction for me when we launched the loyalty program, understanding how as with everything else, we launched the program. Not many people were using it. Then we optimized the program and seeing how users, based on the feedback from the users, and then we improved the program. So it was a great experience for me at that point of time in my career.
Love to hear about like early experiences. They form a lot of what we do even now. Tell me early cases, like some beliefs or point of views that you had that you might have like changed over time.
Yeah, given my experience, since I've worked a lot in payments and then I worked in personalization and growth initiatives as well. Initially, my assumption was always like any user friction is bad. What I mean by that is like, let's say you're in payments and let's say you as a user go to a billing page to buy something. You want to keep the friction as minimal as possible. For example, you might just ask the user for a credit card. The most important details may be your CVV or something. And then don't ask for billing address if you don't need for fraud reasons or anything like that, or reduce the number of fields that you want to ask the user as minimal as possible, because at that point of time, the user is ready to make a purchase, make it easy for them. So I used to think that was the thing, like reduce the friction as much as possible because users don't like friction. But then it's very different. Let's say you are in acquisition side of things. Friction is good. There is some good friction as well because you need to understand the user, why they're coming to your product, what they're trying to do. Because when you know what their intent is, then you can optimize your funnel as well. You can personalize the funnel based on what they're looking for. But one of the experiences I had was in a company called Bold. We help users create a resume, like easily create a resume so that they can find the right job. But then it changes a lot based on if you're a nurse versus a teacher versus a software engineer. The way you create a resume changes a lot. So knowing like in the beginning, if I know exactly who you are, you can optimize it. So it's very different. So there's no set standard rule that user friction is bad based on where you are in the funnel, based on what the product is for. Asking users for information is always it's a search practice as well. Of course, you have to test and learn. Everything has to be test and learn. You can have some assumptions, you test, you learn, you adapt.
During this long journey, I would say like all these different companies, like tell me a habit that's kept you effective week after week.
Yeah, one of the things I continue doing since early in my career as well is looking at like areas where I own like the dashboards or metrics, how they are doing week over week, like making sure that things are going well, like that we are not missing anything. At least understand the state of things in the areas that you own, I guess. And then look at the work that is in progress, like what we thought we would achieve last week, and did we achieve it? How are we thinking for the next week? And any looking at the early experiments that we are running, how they are doing, anything that is missing, anything you need to adapt. Not like peaking, but still like having a high level understanding of how experiments are doing. When you do these things, it helps you adapt because nothing is set in stone in product. Like you always need to adapt based on how things are going. So those are the things have helped me a lot, where you're adaptable based on how things are changing, and you change your plans based on that.
Let's now start to dig deeper into some of the topics that we picked out would be useful to talk about. So you mentioned you love to talk about and think about how to organize teams for ownership, for success. And you've built teams in different areas, marketplaces, consumer ads, crypto. Tell me a bit more like when you say ownership, what does it look like day to day for your teams?
When I say ownership, as I'm like, I do want the teams to own the problems. There should be clarity on the problem space that the team is owning. And how do you measure that you're making an impact on those problems? Like those two things are the key. So when I say measure, there should be clarity on the success metrics. What is the North Star for the team? What are your key KPIs that you need to impact? What are your guardrail metrics, which is also very important for the team? So both sides of the equation. One is clear problems space that you're tackling, and then how you're measuring your outcomes. So that is, to me, is a true ownership where you're owning both of those things, and you have a clear mission statement so that you know this is what you're here for, and this is what you're solving for.
Maybe you could give me a couple of examples, either TaskRabbit, previous companies, like how did you organize teams such that everybody has their area of ownership?
Yeah, so what I do is like depending on the area of my ownership, I guess let's say like a platform team, then you try to understand like, oh, what are the things that I am trying to own in this problem space, and then for each of the problem space, you think about do you have the right PMs in there to handle those areas, and then build a chatter for that, like build for each of the teams, like what is the core problems you're solving, what is the mission going to be, what are the success metrics for the team, who are your key stakeholders, and then you organize based on that. There are instances where I have done, sometimes the scope is not clear. For example, in one of the companies, there was a team called Tools Team. It was very open-ended. So it created an impression that any tool that the company uses should go through this PM, which is not what a PM does, right? PM doesn't do tools integration. PM owns problems. So you need to have a clear understanding of like, what does tools team even mean? Like, what is a charter for the team? So in those cases, like I had to clarify, like, oh, this is not what the team is for. The team is for providing a better support experience for our users. That is like a great problem, and then you're solving based on that. Like, and you own the tools related relevant to that, but you don't own tools across the whole company. That is like more like a project management role or something in some cases. So yeah, clarifying what the role of the team is. And once you provide the clarity, the other thing that comes in is like the team also understands. It's not just the product manager. It's like your engineers, your any other members, your design team, everyone else understands, okay, this is what we are trying to solve. And now the whole team can work together to solve those problems. Otherwise, one of the things I've seen is when there's no clarity, when there's a lack of clarity, things don't move, and then it creates a lot of confusion across the board. And sometimes the teams can become a bottleneck as well because everyone feels like, oh, this team has to take care of this. Sometimes that might not be relevant for the team to own.
I love it that you start talking about like clarity. Like, tell me more. What are maybe some anti-patterns, like things that go wrong that you watch out for in making sure that there's ownership?
Yeah, that's a great question because couple of things I've seen is sometimes it feels like the teams are really busy, like they're literally running, like everyone's really busy. But then when you look at the outcomes, nothing is getting achieved, and that it's an anti-pattern, right? It feels like because the teams will be thinking, oh, I'm doing so much work, I'm every day, I'm just like running, 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 but then it's at the end, when you look at the outcome, if they're not moving the needle, it means that you're just running right there. You're not moving forward, right? So that is a thing that you need to be very careful. Like when things like that happen through goaling or how you measure the outcomes, and then correcting the team to understand that maybe there's something else going on, that the team either is not prioritizing correctly, or maybe they're focused on launching things, not hoping for the outcomes, I guess. Then sometimes the other anti-pattern I've seen is like sometimes teams focus too much on one metric. They try to move the needle in one metric and then forget the broader scope of the problem. So sometimes what happens is like one of the sayings that we have in fraud is like the easiest way to reduce fraud is to stop all the revenue. There's like zero fraud, right? Yeah, but then yeah, if you ask a fraud PM, you achieved your goal. Yes, you achieved your goal because there is no fraud. But then the business is not running now, so you have to also take a broader lens through the ecosystem to understand like the things that you're optimizing for are also not hurting other parts of the business. So those are the two things that I always try to keep an eye on to make sure that we are not the teams that I own or manage, like they're doing the right things.
I love it. Like earlier, you also described metrics and then the guardrails or the counter metrics and how they keep everything in check. So you mentioned team not owning outcomes, not achieving. How do you coach them out of it? Like, what's your intervention?
Each thing is different. Each time it's different, right? There's no like set rules for how you do it. Like sometimes it depends on first trying to understand where the problem is. Sometimes it can be that there's no clarity. Like maybe there's a lack of clarity on like what they're trying to achieve. So try to understand, do the teams understand what they're trying to achieve? Then it can be like sometimes they don't have the right skills. When they don't have the right skills, then you try to assess like, okay, maybe some skills or gaps are there, and you try to provide coaching there. And in some cases, you might find out that maybe it's not the right team. Maybe the people in the team are not right for it. Then in those cases, you might need to restructure the team so that they achieve to get the things done there. So depends. It's not a straightforward answer. Depending on what the symptom is, then you try to tackle the problem.
But it seems you have somewhat of a playbook, like clarity first, then skill sets, then like alignment and team dynamics is the next step beyond that.
That's like the great framework that I follow through because I always try to not assume things, try to understand, ask the questions to different parts of the team members to understand what is happening, why is it happening. There is also some cases where the teams might choose the wrong goals as well. I had this some great lessons that I learned in my career at Facebook when I first joined. I had a goal to launch a product like launch XYZ, let's say that. And then I got this great advice from my manager. It's like launch is never a goal. It's not a goal. The goal is you improve X by doing Y or something. If you are just launching things and it does nothing, why even launch, right? So that's a great symptom why things are not moving. So these are little things like where you coach, like that was a great coaching advice that I got from my manager, and I kept it in all the time. I always give coaching to my PMs as well. Like never, don't like always have a sight of the problem that you're solving, not like building.
We used to call it like focus on landing, not launching, and like very similar. Since you spend time in all these fairly different companies, Meta, Coinbase, TaskRabbit, I'll begin with a high level question. How does product management change across these different companies?
Each company has been very different for me, depending on the industry it is in, the stage it is in, how it is being managed by the CEO, I guess. So, for example, Meta is before I joined Meta, I thought like, oh, it's a very big company, things might move slow. But then once I joined, it's like, oh, things go so fast there. And the reason they go fast is because it's very goal-oriented company, like outcome-oriented company. So each team is pushed really hard to set very aggressive goals. Meta, we used to call it as 50-50 goaling, where we say that the likelihood of a team achieving the goals that you set is only 50%. And if you set a easy goals, that we used to get pushback on that. Like that's not like a strong goal. And so there's a lot of thinking within the teams to set aggressive goals, and also you cannot just say at Meta that I didn't have the resources, so I did not get it done. That doesn't work there. The questions that we get is like, what did you do? to overcome that. So the culture is very different. It's very metrics driven. It's very experimentation oriented culture. It's very fast paced, and that's how. And I think it comes from the top, like how Zuck leads it, and he made sure that is there. But of course, it has other challenges. Like for a bigger company, you have lots of teams. Each team is owning one part of the product, and it's very small area, but the scope is huge, but the area might be small. Then Coinbase was very different as well for me. It's because the industry that we were in, it's a crypto, it's in crypto, and the crypto landscape evolves very fast. It's like things change. Like today you think about something, tomorrow things can change. And when I was there, it was even more interesting. Like as in like the regulatory landscape was not as clear as it is right now. So it was very interesting in the sense like today we might be thinking, oh no, like we have to do XYZ things, and then a week after things might change. So you have to be very adaptable to how the industry is changing and how users are reacting to different changes because we were there's a lot of competition in crypto and there's a lot of things happening. And so depending on how some users react, to changes that we're making, we used to get some direct feedback from our executives as well. So it was very nimble. We had to be very adaptable to how things are going. There's no one can just say, "Oh, I have this roadmap for the next 6 months. I will not do X, Y." It doesn't work that way. You have to change based on what is happening. And then now it has to, things are very different here as well. We are owned by IKEA. It's a different kind of company. We are very focused on users, like how can we help our clients who want to get some job done with taskers and we want to make sure that they can earn a meaningful income through our platform, connecting those two entities together with high trust. So it's each company has been different. It's its own learning. So it has been a great learning experience for me as well.
You mentioned so many company stage, the industry, how the industry is evolving has had so much to do with how each company functions. Now tell me, as you transitioned, what are maybe some lessons you needed to unlearn, maybe lessons you needed to learn to be successful at these various companies?
Again, each company has been different and yeah, learn and unlearn, I guess. So at Facebook, since we are very fast paced, but we also had to be very metrics driven. So it was very experiment oriented. So we have to learn to run fast experiments and then also ensure that we are able to drive outcomes and not just things like that. So it was very interesting culture there. And at Coinbase, there was heavy focus on writing. There was like clear communication was one of the goals there. So I have learned a lot of good skills there. Like not that at Meta, but it's different. It's just the writing culture was very uh, critical for Coinbase, and we were fully remote. So it was 100% remote, and there was culture within the company that decisions should be made through documents, and it cannot be like because if you're 100% remote, there's nothing like a conversation that happens in person, right? So you need to ensure everyone line. And we had a lot of really good frameworks, like how do you ensure that decisions are made? Because I've seen in some companies where things take forever to get to a decision point. So we used to have this framework called Rapid that we used for our documents, where there was clear one decision maker. There are people who can provide input to the document, but then we have clear roles for each of them. And it helped us move fast there. But that was very helpful thing for me to understand as well. And then at TaskRabbit, it is different as well. We do not do that many experiments, so we have other ways to ensure that we are understanding user feedback, talking to them as much as possible, gathering feedback. So yeah, each company, depending on how the company culture is, I guess, I had to adapt, learn, unlearn. But some things stayed like experiment, like learning through experimentation has been a great learning for me. Documentation, writing has been great. Communication, like even oral, verbal.
Over the past few episodes we've done, we've had quite a few guests on platform product management. And it's been a very popular topic for our listeners as well. So I want to dig into that with you a little bit. But like fundamentally, what would be the top differences between an application product manager and a platform product manager?
At a high level, usually application PMs are building products for the end users, and platform PMs are usually building products for the internal users. That is the biggest difference I see. But in some cases, you might be also building products for the end users. For example, Payments is always considered a platform or a shared role, but then the components that you own impact the end users, like a billing component where the user is entering the credit card, you own it, like the whole thing, and it has a huge impact on the business. Of course, like once the charge doesn't go through, ensuring that the charge, there are some other strategies that we employ in payments, like retries, fraud, and all of these things have an impact on the end user business, like how it is done. So it's not like a set in stone thing, but at a high level, yes, the application PMs are building features for the end users, whereas the platform PMs are building products for the internal users.
Got it. If you reflect back, are there even different archetypes of PMs that are successful in one role versus another? And, like related to that, if somebody's thinking about what do I become, how should they think about that?
Yeah, I think within platform product management, what I've seen in my experience has been like if someone is slightly technical, it helps a lot because you're building systems for the internal users, thinking through like the kinds of products that you want to build where it interacts through APIs within other applications. A PM who can understand, not like they don't need to code or anything like that, but still be able to understand at a technical level how systems interact, how two systems really interact, like talk to each other through APIs or something. Uh, Sort of like speak the language of an engineer. I guess it helps a lot when you speak the language of an engineer, even though you're not coding. But if you can do that, the engineers also really appreciate it because they don't need to be in all the meetings that you are in, and you can cover for them, and it builds a lot of trust as well. So that is one of the areas that I've seen that would really help. The other thing is, it feels simple, but usually platform PMs have a lot of stakeholders. A lot of people require things from you to build. And then you also have your own roadmap and understanding the prioritization and you work with your stakeholders to ensure that they are not like sometimes some stakeholders might be very adamant or something. So you need to have good frameworks for how you prioritize things, and collaboration is key because it's all internal. Anything it can get escalated as well, but you don't want things to get escalated. You need to be a collaborator where you're working with the other team so that they understand where you're coming from, why you're doing X or Y. Those are critical skills for a platform PM to have as well.
I want to bring this back to something you were saying earlier. You're talking about metrics and each team having ownership and those sort of metrics. And some of the metrics around consumer behavior and like impact on the user just seem awesome. They seem great to put on promotion packets and those sort of things. How do you make the case for promotion and use the right metrics as a platform PM?
It's a great question because there's always this assumption that, oh, platform PMs might not have metrics, right? That's not always the thing. It depends on what you're doing. For example, if you're in payments, you have clear metrics there. How many transactions are going through successfully? That's very clear metrics there. Risk as well, how much fraud losses you're having. If you're reducing those fraud losses without negatively impacting a lot of revenue, then you have clear metrics there. But if you're building core services that are shared across the other teams, that's where it gets interesting, right? Like what is the metric that you're driving? So sometimes you go with adoption, like how many teams are using it or something, or sometimes you go by based on what does that service enable. Like for example, in some cases, you might build a service that enables a partnership. Because let's take an example where you're building an authentication service or authorization service, and once you have that, your APIs now, if an external party tries to access them, you will be able to authenticate them, authorize them. So now you're enabling that. And when you enable that, the revenue that gets generated from that partnership it's a shared outcome, right? So in a way, your PM can take credit for that. So the way I have done in my experience is like looking at this, not just the direct impact, like sometimes there is second order effect of that, like what you have done has enabled the company to do some other things, and that helps build a case for these PMs to get to the next level as well, to help them in promotions and all, like to show clearly the story, because it's all about like telling the narrative of like what the PM has done and how they help the business.
It seems like no matter what you do, there's always a way to include metrics. You just might have to look through it differently.
Yes, because the way I see it as well, I think in a way it feels like, oh, everything is metric driven, but then that's an objective way to assess something. Because if you don't have an objective way, then it gets subjective. And once it is subjective, it's like some people are great storytellers, and then it gets harder, right? Who says the best story might win, and then that is not the way you want your teams to be managed. So yeah, there has to be some objective way to assess how different members are performing.
Let's talk about now one sort of last main topic. You spent a lot of time in payments, risk across different kinds of companies. These are often both interesting and mysterious things for many product managers. What first drew you into this field and what keeps you there?
I didn't choose this. Like I got lucky, I guess. So what happened was when I was at Vistaprint, I used to work in. I was working as an expat in Barcelona, Spain, setting up an European office there, and then I had to come back to US for my green card, and I was waiting for teams that had an opening for me to take, and the payments team at Vistaprint had an opening, and so they were like, "Yeah, come back here," and that was my first introduction to product management as well. So I was like a technical PM there for the payments team. I learned everything there on payments. And it was such an interesting space. And the reason I love payments is it seems simple. Like in US, it's kind of simple, I would say, in US because we mainly use credit cards. And it's like, yeah, credit cards are very well set. But once you go outside US, it gets very, very interesting. You have other kinds of payment methods. Like at least when I started in payments industry back then, Klarna was there. That was up and coming back then. They first came in Nordics, and we first time integrated with them at Vistaprint, and we were thinking, oh, people putting their SSN in Sweden in public, and because like in Klarna, the way it works in Sweden, at least you enter an ID which is similar to an SSN, and Klarna behind the scenes assesses your risk and decides whether they can let you do the installments. It was unheard of back then. Now it's so common. But the Uber story is like it's not as simple as it looks like from the outside. Like it's not just credit cards. There's a lot of things, a lot of complexity in it here. And then my career, like I think one step led to the other. Then I came to SF for like, this company called Pole. They needed someone in payments. I started there and I had a very broad scope and I owned a lot of things and somehow it always kept me interested. I went around, like I tried growth, I tried at Facebook, I was in ads, personalization. Somehow, I think, I don't know, like my fate is kind of like it decides, I guess it always comes back to me. So, and I love it. Like risk is also very interesting. As I said previously, the best way to reduce risk is to stop all the revenue, but that's not how you want to do it, right? So there's a lot of thinking around like how do you do it? Like because the thing though is like there are n number of ways to reduce risk, but then you can be very aggressive and stop a lot of people from making transactions, but that hurts the business. But then, how do you think about false positives? How do you ensure that the good people are not getting a lot of friction? So there's a lot of thinking around that as well. Like so, it's a challenging space. And the thing with fraud and risk is it evolves a lot. The bad actors are so smart. They don't just sit, oh, they're trying something, you stop it, they just don't stop there. They try something else. So it's always like a whack-a-mole, like you're trying to find something and then they come something else. So it's a very interesting area.
It seems it's a very complex, interesting problem to solve once you like really start to get into it.
Yeah, once you get into it, it's very interesting. Like, and thinking through like some of the fraud patterns, you see, wow, like how did you guys even think about this? Like, you'll be amazed, like how good some like it's like yeah, it's a very interesting space. When I was at Coinbase, some of the fraud patterns that we saw was like, oh, mind blowing.
Tell me one example. I mean, I don't want to give people ideas of how do you do fraud, but just
I'll take an
something
example,
fun.
very public, I guess. That is the easiest way to do it, I guess. So, have you ever heard about this pig butchering scam?
No, I have not.
Okay, so this is an interesting scam where someone like pretends that they are single, alone, and they need some company or something. Then they find some other person on the other end, and they become friends, I guess. And then they slowly ask them to transfer crypto. And these people don't realize that they're in a scam and they go in and then they transfer crypto. So the way it happens is, um, since in crypto, like once you transfer the money from, let's say from Coinbase, let's say you transfer to a blockchain address, it's done. There's nothing we can do to get back. Um, So the reason it's very interesting or challenging is because there are different types of fraud. One type of fraud is you steal a credit card and you use the credit card to buy something. That's like you can. There are lots of signals to figure that out. It's called third-party fraud. You know, like some third parties performing it, and there's ways to identify it because your IP address might be different. You're doing your transactions somewhere else, or your buying patterns might differ. There's a lot of ways to do it. But if you are the person who are in a scam and you're not aware of it, and you're going through that, it's very hard for any company to stop it, right? Like because what can you do if you decide to send money to someone else? Who am I to stop you from doing it? But then that's not how the regulation or the other industry looks at it, because they also want us to put in some guardrails to ensure that not many people are trapped in this. So we tried a lot to ensure. So, for example, if we see someone transferring way too much money, we ask them like, are you the like we give them some warnings, we give them some educational materials like what kind of scams these are, and sometimes we make them go through some friction, which is like do some identity verification, even though we know who they are, but still like we try to slow them down a bit. We sometimes hold the balance, like we say like we want to make sure this is right. And sometimes it helps. When you add some friction, it helps, but sometimes it doesn't. But it feels sad because after a while, they realize that all their savings are gone. And then they blame the company for, oh, you let me transfer this money to this roster. Why didn't you stop us? It's very interesting. It feels like on the surface, like, why is this company being blamed for it? But it is how the regulatory agents look at it as well. So we have to do all. Like even now in Zelle, like for example, you're trying to transfer money, they make you check a box, read through a few things and check a box. The reason it came in is because there has been some fraud incidents that happened, so they wanted to make sure that you are aware of how fraud happens. And so it's a very interesting kind of fraud that we have.
Fraudsters are highly evolving and they're highly entrepreneurial. And so it's always like trying to stay one step ahead of them.
Yeah, and you try. That's the only thing I can say. You can never be. If anyone said that I solved fraud for a company, I was like, oh my God, that's never true. You can never solve 100% fraud.
As we come towards the end of this podcast, let me just ask you a couple of like quick lightning questions, then we'll call it a day. So let's talk about storytelling. One common mistake product managers make when they are telling their story, whether it's for a product or for promotion or anything, and how should they fix it?
Yeah, one of the things I've noticed is like people talk about that, like the previously what I was saying, like what they did, not what they achieved or how they impacted the problem, I guess. So if someone says that I launched XYZ, you would be like, so what? It doesn't matter what you have launched or what you have built, right? It's like, what was the impact of that? Like, what was the change that you made? Like, maybe you did something where your users were now able to do a lot more things than they could do before. That is how you change perspective, because especially in product, it's very focused on users, it's focused on the business. Like, like make sure that what you say is adapted to those lines would really help, rather than like saying what you built or it is good, but still it's just a means to achieve a thing, right? So you always need to be aware of what your end goal was.
I asked you about habits in the beginning. I'm going to ask you again, like maybe what's one habit that keeps you going now in your career and like keeps leveling you up?
Outside of work, I like to learn new things. I just try new things. So that I think helps me even at work as well. That's why I have done different things in my career as well. Is I just try to learn. So for example, I'm learning piano now. I have never learned as a kid any musical instrument. I thought like maybe I should try something. So I'm learning now. I'm struggling because it's so hard at this age, I guess, to learn something. I never realized how hard it is, I guess. But now I got into it. I'm taking lessons, but it's so bad. Like it's like my wife hates when I play it, but then now I bought a headphone so that my wife cannot listen what I'm playing, I guess. But so for me, what helps me, I guess, it's just like the fact that I just want to learn new things. I'm not like fixated on like, oh, I'm happy in this area. I'll just continue doing the same thing, and that helps me in my career as well. Like just trying to whenever I have an opportunity, I just raise my hand up. I want to do something different from what I've done.
So with that, I'll ask you last question, which is like, what's the recent book or podcast or something that you picked up that you would recommend to product managers?
In this one, like I think the podcast, I think a lot of PMs are now doing as well. Lenny's has been very helpful. It has been like, but it seems like a common answer, I guess. The other thing that I'm listening more to recently is this AI daily brief, like because the AI industry is evolving so fast. I'm listening to this podcast, so just so that I can stay not up to date, but at least like know how things are evolving, I guess, because I feel like it's like every day I hear something new, and it's like God, it's like things like would my job exist or not? I guess in a way, it's very interesting. It keeps you grounded as well, like looking at these things. But it helps me be aware of what is happening, and also like as a PM, you can use so many of these AI tools, and it helps you become more effective as well. I think using AI in your day-to-day job is so critical right now. It's like we cannot ignore it anymore. So that to me right now is key. Like I want to read as much as possible on the, how things are evolving so that I can use it as much as possible.
Kishore, this was awesome. Thanks for all the insights you shared. Tell me more, where can people follow your work?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. You can reach me at Kishore Narra. Like so, if you search my name, you should be able to find it on X as well. But I'm not. I don't post a lot. Like I'm very like a silent reader, I guess. So, but if anyone has any comments or feedback or anything they want to reach me out for career advice or something, please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. I'm very active there.
We'll be sure to put the LinkedIn in the show notes as well. So once again, just thank you again for making the time. I'm sure people are going to get a lot out of it. I learned a lot about fraud patterns, platform PMs, risk and fraud and all these things. And then for everyone, if this helps, just make sure you follow, share the episode. Like that's how we grow. And if you want help crafting leadership narrative, I'll also leave links to learn more about Intentional Product Manager. Thank you, Kishore, and thank you everyone who is listening.
Thank you, Shobit. Great chatting with you.
Hey, be sure to check out our website at intentionalproductmanager.com to see how you can level up in your career.